speaker is Rich Heller. And Rich hails all the way from New York. I met Rich a couple of months ago at a networking event, and initially was very fascinated by what he does with his work with relationships. And so after a conversation or two, I really began to appreciate that this is a man who's very, very passionate about what he does. And he's also a terribly nice guy. So I said I'd ask him on the meetup. So Rich is a relationship coach. He's a speaker. He's a mediator. And in his own words, he's on a mission to help families have greater joy and resilience in their lives. Rich, again, in his own words, he was born into a family that was an ongoing Armageddon. There was a lot of conflict, dishonesty, and confrontation. These were pretty much the norm. And this seems to be a big part of what drives him. So in his adult years, he got help from numerous professionals, and he's now happily married with 6 kids himself. And now he's on, basically, then he set out to help others. Rich has a master's in social work and is a professional certified coach and a trained mediator, and he runs his own practice, Rich in Relationships. Check out Rich's socials. His short videos in particular on Instagram and YouTube are particularly really, really good. Some really gems in there. I particularly like his commentary in the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case of late as well. There's links in the chat for Rich's websites and his socials and stuff. And Rich is going to be presenting today on fighting for your relationship, why conflict can be positive. And other than that, I'll hand you over to Rich.
Good morning. Oh, I love Fintan Kennedy's picture. It's all about conflict. Nice. All right, great to see your names today. I want to start out with a story because I love a good story. And so as Jayson pointed out, my childhood home was filled with Armageddon, filled with conflict, filled with dissonance. The best times in our household, and by the way, I don't tell you this so you can play your little violin for me. I tell you this because I just want you to understand why I do what I do. And I'm actually grateful for the environment that I grew up in, because I wouldn't be able to do what I do now had I not emerged from that environment. And my relationship with my mom is fantastic today, and my relationship with my dad was as good as it could be before he passed away. So it's not a tragic story. Actually, it has a big happy ending, the story of my family. But the best times in the household were when we were alone. If one of the parents was there, it was okay, but you never knew. You were walking on eggshells. And if both parents were there, it was explosive. And so I spent a lot of time out of the house. And I grew up in a neighborhood in New York City that back then was a little edgy. Now it's big money, but there was me, the rich, pale-skinned guy in the neighborhood with all varieties of less wealthy people. And so I was a natural target. And it started out with me avoiding conflict. I was always looking, oh my God, there's somebody who's dangerous. What am I going to do? I better run. Then I couldn't avoid it anymore because you're walking down the street, there's no way out. And I had some really humiliating experiences. And finally, one day something snapped. And I remember a friend and I were in this playground area, and there was a group of youths. We were in our teens. And one of them, having a conversation with one of them, and one of the youths is off to my side, and he pulls out, the guy I'm talking to pulls out a knife and says, "Give me your money." And something snapped in me in that moment, and I said to him, "You know, you're gonna have to kill me." Right? Like, this is a crazy thing to say. We're outnumbered 6-2. This friend, he's starting to back out like he doesn't want to be there. And I said, you know, very rational, I said to him, "You're going to have to kill me." I said, "But probably, you know, if you do, you're going to get hurt along the way. This probably isn't such a good idea." And then something really unexpected happened. Somebody punched me in the face, cold cocked me in the face from the side. And now I was a big lad, and I played American football, so being hit wasn't a big deal to me. And I turned and I looked at this guy like, what was that for? And they all freaked out because nobody had ever been cold cocked in this group, and turned around and just looked at someone. And the guy put his knife away. The guy in front of me at that moment put his knife away. And you know, the next day we were smoking a little something together. I'll just leave it at that. Nothing too incriminating. So this is a very unexpected result. I want you to think about, why is that? Why? So just throw in the chat. Why do you think it ended that way? Just a word or two. I want to know that you're alive. And I could put on some game show music while I wait. Do, 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 do. He could relate. Something, yeah, there was definitely something relatable. There was something really different than happened here. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. This is, in case you don't know, that's what is that from? I don't even know what that's from. Do, do, some terrible American game show. Yes, he could relate, but also it was what was absent in that conflict was where neither of us went, yeah, right, depersonalize the conflict, very good. What was absent in that conflict was, I didn't say to him, what you, whatever race or ethnicity they were, and neither did they, by the way. None of that was present in the room on that day. I don't know why, but it wasn't. Maybe because it was a very mixed neighborhood and we were all used to seeing each other. There was very little, there was fear, but the fear didn't have me. Like, I was just overtaken by this insane thought that I'm done with this. I am done with being bullied. I am done with running away from conflict. There was a stand that I took, but I didn't say to him, I'm gonna kill you, mofo. What I said to him is, you know what, I may die, but you're gonna get hurt. It was like a clear recognition that the outcome wouldn't be good for me, but that it wouldn't be good for them either. So it was presented as a lose-lose, and he bought it. He was like, you know what? I don't want to kill someone and I don't want to get hurt. You know, he bought it. So there was something different and unusual in that conflict. My fear left me. I don't know if my fear, yeah, you know what? A better way to put it would be that my cerebral cortex won out over my amygdala, and we'll talk about that more. And I went on after that experience to study martial arts, and I still practice martial arts. I got 5th degree black belt in the World Sado Karate System today, and I've taught kids and all this other stuff. And the more I do that stuff, the less those situations feel threatening. Not because my kung fu is so powerful, but because in that kind of training, you confront your fear again and again and again. You learn to master parts of your brain. So let's talk about conflict. When I say the word conflict, what's the first word you think of? Throw it in the chat. War, yeah. Anger. Jesus. Misunderstanding. Yeah, excellent, excellent, all good. And the fact of the matter is, fight, hurt. We have a lot, fight. We have a lot of negative association with conflict, with the word conflict. But in its essence, I got even a direct message. Yeah, and you feel free to direct message me if you don't want the rest of the group to hear your responses. That's fine. We have a negative association with the word conflict, but in its essence, conflict is about disagreement, right? That young man and I had a disagreement. He wanted my money. I didn't want to give it to him. Fundamental disagreement. He wanted something I had. He wanted something from me. He got, by the way, he got something from me. He got some kind of validation that was more important to him than the money. Used to hate it and avoid it, says someone else about conflict. There was a difference there, and somehow he didn't get what the money actually represents something to that young man, right? He came from a poorer family than I did. Money, highly symbolic, right? Money is not attached to anything anymore. I don't want to go off on a rant about that, but you know, it used to be attached to gold, and now money just has the value that we believe that it has. You know, if a country has a currency, as the stronger we think the country is, the better we think the currency is. But the currency really is highly symbolic, and so we tend to lay a lot more into money. Theft, stealing often is more opposing views and perspective, yes, are more about what it represents than the actual money. All right, so in that instance, I'm going to take a quick look at my notes over here. There was a disagreement, and he got something out of it that was as important as money to him, so much so that he, the next time I saw him, sat down and shared something of his with me. Just a little something, you know, like I was a youth. What do you want from me? That's what we did back then. But also it was a way to, bring us both to a more sedate place. The point is that conflict, difference, everything good in the world comes out of difference and conflict. Everything crappy in the world comes out of it too. How we deal with difference defines the quality of our life. So what I mean by that is I work, for example, with couples in conflict. I work with couples who want to go through a transition, like having a baby together. They're afraid, they've got some kind of difference. I work with people who are getting divorced. They're in high conflict with someone they see as toxic. How they meet that difference or don't defines how juicy and exciting their life is going to be as a result of it. When couples are in complete avoidance of conflict, they just lead parallel lives. And it's all good, and they develop as individuals, but their relationship falters. Often those couples, the only thing they agree on is raising their children, and that's why we have such high levels of gray divorce. People whose kids grow up and they go, crap, we have nothing in common, because they never dealt with their difference. Or another thing that happens, that the way those people actually come to me is one of them gets really bored, and they go find somebody else to shtup. And there's some infidelity of some kind, and then there's a major conflict, and because they've never had any conflict, because they've been avoiding conflict in their relationship, it just explodes, and they call me up and they talk about it. Or then we have the people who are engaging in conflict all the time, but in a negative way, right? That thing with that kid could have gone really sideways. I could have said to him, look, you, whatever ethnicity he was, with a derogatory word, I'm not going to put up with your crap. Go ahead, stab me. And he might have just gutted me right there and run away. I mean, it could have gone really sideways. That's because I would have been coming from a place of anger and fear. And I would have been coming from a place of, I'm going to win, you're going to lose no matter what. I don't even care that you have a knife and there's 6 of you and 2 of us. I'm going to kill you all, which is even crazier than what I said to him, right? And so couples who come to me in that place, they're in that place of, both of them have taken the stance of, I'm going to win and you're going to lose. And so even when the other person for a moment says, you know what, you're right about that. When you're in that place of, I'm going to win, you're going to lose, what you say is, damn straight I'm right. And let me tell you something else. Instead of seeing that, they'll take the olive branch that the other person offers them and beat them with it, right? That's what negative conflict is all about. So what is positive conflict? All right, positive conflict is where we start to have empathy for one another, right? Like that story I told you, there was actually empathy present. He empathized with me. He thought for a second, what would I feel like if somebody pointed a knife to me? He said, there was a recognition that it was uneven balance of power there in what I said to him. He got it. He felt where I was coming from. He got my fear. He saw my courage. He respected it. He saw that I acknowledged their power in that situation, which, if you are feeling disempowered because of classism or racism, being told that you have power is what you want, right? He was empowered in that moment. There was recognition that he had some control over that situation. And this is for a young man who felt like he had no control in his life. So that was the exchange. That was the gift of that. In couples, that's the same process that works. And we're going to talk about that a little more. Going to take a sip here. How y'all doing? Throw it in the chat. Are you still with me? How's the beach? Wouldn't it be nice if we could do this walking on the beach? Thank you for the thumbs up. All right. So what didn't happen in that exchange with that young man and his pals was, even though my amygdala was triggered, it didn't own me. And so the amygdala, for those of you who don't, it's windy at the beach, thank you. The amygdala is the part of our brain that is always looking for danger. It's very primal, and it's totally not rational. And it doesn't really matter, you know, if you're a creationist, then you think that God gave you an amygdala because it's important instinct to have. If you're an evolutionist, then you think the amygdala was the first thing that we evolved because it's the only way that we stay safe, and the other parts of our brain evolved later. And if you're an alien theorist, then you believe that the aliens came, saw that we had this primitive brain and helped develop our cerebral cortex so that we could overcome it. It doesn't really matter why or how. The point is we have this part of our brain that's always looking for danger. It's chattering all the time. It's looking forward, it's looking backward. You know, when you're going through your day and you're thinking, oh my God, I forgot my cell phone. Nobody's gonna be able to reach me. This is terrible, it's a disaster. What am I gonna do? That's your amygdala. Or when you're walking into a meeting at work and you think, oh, the boss said he wants to talk to me today. Look at that, I'm such a misogynist. The boss says she wants to talk to me today. Let's just turn that one upside down right now. The boss says she wants to talk to me today, and I don't know what it is, and I'm so scared. That's our amygdala is chattering to us. And what chills that thing out is our cerebral cortex, which is rational. Now, I am not a brain scientist. I am just parroting back what I've read and understand. When we get into a fight, a situation, that situation, right? I didn't know that guy. I had very low investment in the outcome. He doesn't know my buttons and I don't know his. I just know this is life-threatening moment. And for me, like it was kind of a rite of passage as a youth moment, right? Where, am I going to keep being trampled on or am I going to stand for myself, right? Amygdala active, cerebral cortex 1, right? The cerebral cortex said, I'm in charge here. You know, we're not going to put up with these situations anymore. There's a principle here. Men don't take this, and we're going to deal with this my way. The amygdala would have been, you know, is the part that wants to say, yo, mofo, what, you know, that you're not going to, you know, it gets angry, it gets crazy. The cerebral cortex speaks rationally and says, there may be a fight here. I will probably die, but you will be hurt. That is all cerebral cortex. So at work, our amygdala has less dominance because there's less history. But in our primal relationships, like with our parents, our siblings, or our partners, the amygdala rules. And why is that? Because they know our buttons. And so part of having going from that destructive conflict that I talked about, I'm going to win, you're going to lose, to a positive conflict, which would be, I want this to be a win-win, even though we disagree. Part of moving from I'm going to kill you to I have empathy for you to let's win together has to do with managing our amygdala, not letting our buttons be pushed. So the first part is identify your triggers, start to know what they are. And identifying your triggers, I'm going to spare you the long story. Identifying our triggers is kind of like this piece right here. Our coach told me a story once that so fits this. He says, a man is walking down the street and he's reading a book, or more likely today we're looking at our phones, and falls into a hole. Maybe it's a woman, but maybe, you know what, let's go beyond that. They, them are walking down the street looking at their phone, and they fall into a hole because they've been looking at their phone, and they go, holy crap, there's a big hole here. And they put their phone away because it's really hard to climb with your phone in your hand, and they climb out of the hole and they brush themselves off. And of course they pick their phone back up because we're all addicted to these things anyway. And they go, wow, that was a hell of a hole. The next day they're walking down the street looking at their phone because we're creatures of habit, and we've got to be watching Rich on TikTok and, you know, Instagram and all the places that he presents. And all of a sudden our cerebral cortex says, wait a minute. Last time we did this, we fell in a hole, and we look, and lo and behold, the hole is there. And so we tiptoe around the hole, pick up our phone and keep going. The next day we get on the street and we're a little more aware of that hole, and we think, you know what, I'm going to walk in the street. And the next day we're more aware. We say, I'm going to walk on the other side of the street. And then one day we go, why am I walking down that street? There's this hole there. And we go a whole nother way. That's kind of how it goes with trigger management and our amygdala. The more we get to know it and understand our buttons, our triggers, our amygdala and how it works, the better we get at not having it own us. And the distinction here is the emotion having us? Like, does it own us? When we get angry, are we just so wrapped up in the emotion that there's not a rational thought? Or are we in a place where we notice that we're angry, we notice the emotions there, but we can still, like in that moment I had with that young man, we can still think rationally. That's the distinction. right? I mean, as we start to master our triggers and our amygdala, we get to more of that place. I wish, by the way, wish I could say that that instance with that young man, I was 16 at the time, was the starting point for a whole new way in my life, but it wasn't. I want you to know I rode that emotional, self-righteous anger thing as well as anybody. It took me a long time before I actually learned about this and started working at it. Ways that we can manage our amygdala are prayer, meditation, and mindfulness. Studies show that when we do any of these three things, it lights up our cerebral cortex, and our attention moves from our amygdala to our cerebral cortex. And this further studies show that if you do any one or all of these things at least 4 times a week for approximately 15 to 20 minutes, your amygdala actually shrinks and your cerebral cortex grows. I mean, check that out. And the good news is we are not our brains. Our brains are just another muscle that we get to exercise. We choose where we hang out in our brain. We choose whether we're going to spend time in our amygdala or whether we're going to spend time in our cerebral cortex. So there's hope. You can master destructive conflict just by mastering this part of your brain. And it takes practice and exercise. It also takes, in our personal relationships, getting to know about what's our programming, right? All that programming, all those buttons from 0 to 7, the theory is we are basically egoless creatures, and our unconscious mind is being programmed by our family. And so all of our concepts, this is really like, I'm breaking it down to really raw stuff here. All of our concepts of conflict, of marriage, of partnership, of interacting with others are all instilled in us in that moment from our families and our schools and our surrounding culture, and all the influences there. And so what we basically are doing is we're looking to identify, all right, so what was the software that was installed from 0 to 7, and how do I reprogram it? And the first step is to master your brain and your amygdala. The second step is to start doing the unconscious work. That's really the deep stuff. All right, so you've done all this good stuff. Let's just say you've done all this good stuff, or you're doing all this good stuff. You're on the path, right? It's enough that you're on the path. What next? How do we make conflict positive? How do we make conflict go from like a heavy metal song that has nothing in it except death and destruction to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, which is an amazing contrast of hard and soft and fast and slow, right? That's what the real beauty of difference is, the melding of distinctions of hard, soft, fast, slow. That's the beauty of it. How do we move from to something that's more, by the way, I'm a big fan of heavy metal, so don't think I'm not. There's some great heavy metal bands out there with some great it's hard and soft. They tend to have more hard than soft, but it's out there. But that's like a terrible segue. We've got our amygdala. We're understanding something about the transference that goes on, how your partner in a personal relationship, they inevitably become your mom or your dad. Actually, that can happen at work too. We tend to start relating to the boss as if they're our mom or dad. So you got to watch out. Transference happens all the time. What's next? Here's the thing. Negative conflict is based in taking a position, right? So I'll give you an example from American politics today. The American politics, which baffles the rest of the world, and let's face it, even America. Let's talk about why the hell are kids still taking guns to school and shooting the crap out of their cohorts? Like, what is up with that? I don't know why they're doing it. But why is it that the two sides in America can't agree on this? So there are two positions that are being taken. One is the right to bear arms. We became a country and got free from our English oppressors. Sorry. But I just had to go there because we had the weapons to do it. They had superior army, superior navy, but because we armed all our citizens and all of our citizens were armed, we got free. And thus the right to bear arms is a precious thing in America, because God knows somebody might come here again, right? The Chinese have a bigger army than we have a population, kind of. That's the kind of thinking that goes behind that. I had another word for it, but I'm trying to keep it really neutral today. And then on the other side, you've got people who are about guns should be controlled and removed. If we didn't have the guns, those kids wouldn't have access to them and they wouldn't be shooting anyone. Now, those are two positions about guns in the United States, and both of them are a little extreme, though I'm going to tell you that honestly, I lean towards one more than the other, and we're just going to spare you which one, but you'll probably figure it out as I talk. So on the right to bear arms side, they want what? They want safety. They associate safety with the right to bear arms. They want safety for their children too. What they say is that there's something wrong with our society that children even think about shooting other children. The problem isn't the guns, the problem is the morality of our culture. On the other side, the people who are all about let's get rid of the guns, they say there's something wrong with guns. There's something wrong with the morality of guns themselves. And psychological studies show that if you have a gun in a room and two people meet in a room, they actually are more aggressive with each other. So there is some truth to that. There's a backing to the idea that if there's a weapon in the room, you're going to want to use it or feel connected to it, or it's going to bring up conflict in some way. So the trick is to get under those positions. And what they both want is safety. They want safety. They have different ideas of how to have that safety, but they both want safety. When we get under the positions of the most insane fights that you can think of, and that's a pretty crazy fight when you think about it, like the fact that kids keep getting shot by kids, that we've allowed this to go on in this country for 10 years. I do not understand what is wrong with us here, that we allow that to go on, that we can't figure out how for those two positions to be disarmed, get to the basic thing of we all want our kids to be safe and make it work. But when you get under that position and get to the shared values, there is a ground there for negotiation. And it used to be in politics that we could meet on the shared ground and come up with compromises that helped solve the problem and represented both perspectives. But for whatever reason in this country, and it seems like perhaps in other countries, there's a polarization that's going on where people are really sticking to their positions and refusing to get to those underlying values. When we focus, when we shut down our amygdala, when we stop, well, not shut it down, when we chill it out, because we want it. Like if there's real danger, if somebody comes in the room with a gun, we want our amygdala there so that we know how to react. When we chill out our amygdala, and when we start to release our position and focus on the underlying values, there is an opportunity for harmony. Not necessarily complete agreement, but harmony, right? Just like in Beethoven's Ninth. This is the key to creative conflict. It's the key in your partnerships. It's the key with your parents. It's the key with your siblings. It's the key with your boss. It's the key with the bus driver. It's the key with the man who runs the shop, you know, who's got an attitude, or maybe you got an attitude. It's the key, is underlying values and finding unity and building on that shared agreement. So simple, not easy, because we are wired to defend ourselves and react. And we love our positions. When I get into it with my wife, I love my position. I love to be right, right? And it's the other part, I think, is also empathy, right? There's something in exploring shared values that allows us to connect with the other person and see their point of view. We may not agree with them, but we see where they're coming from. And we can find, when we see where someone is coming from and we have feel connected, we can walk in their shoes, even if we don't agree with them. If we understand why they are the way they are, we can come to some kind of agreement with them. So in the case of my childhood, let's bring it full circle. The reason why I have a great relationship with my mom and I had a good relationship with my dad before he passed away is I started to understand that my dad was a tragic hero. He was someone who, when he was put on the stand in his parents' divorce when he was 10 years old, which we no longer do in this country, thank God, and forced to choose between his mom and his dad. And that scarred him for life. And my mom was molested as a child and had all kinds of issues, and that scarred her. And they both were in the process of unfolding and working that through. But when I understood that about them, my relationship with them completely changed. And we had a much less contentious relationship because I knew where they were coming from. I knew they really did care. I knew that the Armageddon, as we described it, was the only way they felt they could express their affection. How freaking bizarre is that? But sometimes that's how we are. And when we start to get under that, we started to have conversations and relationships that were, even though we still had disagreement, they were less contentious. All right, that's a lot out of me. I'm going to shut up now. And Jayson, take it away, my friend.
Thanks so much, Rich. Wow. There's amazing energy in that. And you're right, an awful lot in it. I suppose I have a million questions myself, and I'm going to limit myself a little bit because we are going to be doing an interview in a couple of days, which you guys will be able to catch on the YouTube as well. We're kind of going to go into a little bit more detail and things like Rich's story and stuff. So I might kind of keep some of the questions I have in relation to what you've just spoken about. And what I'd like, if people have any questions themselves, and I think this could be a good moment. If you have any particular relationship questions, even not necessarily in terms of what Rich was talking about, but if you want to pick the man's brain, I think now is a wonderful opportunity for you. So I might get the ball rolling. First off, a couple of books that you'd recommend, Rich, you know, if you want to give people some homework.
This is a goodie. It's nonviolent communication, right? And so the key is, once we have that empathy and we have that, we want to start exploring those shared values, we want to make sure our communication is nonviolent. Like that thing where I said to that guy, you may kill me, but we're both going to get hurt, was actually a form of nonviolent communication, as bizarre as that sounds. So we want to, this book is a great guideline in how to have communications with people, even in confrontation, that are nonviolent. And then here's one of my favorite, right? Really, we are all engaged every day in negotiation, right? Nobody likes to think about it that way, but every time we encounter another human being, we are, in fact, very fearfully and wonderfully made creatures, unique, each one of us, unique. We each have a unique mission and sense of purpose in life, or you may be discovering it, but there's something that we're uniquely suited for. And because we're so different, there's a negotiation between that difference. And so I'm a big fan on learning about negotiation. Here's one called Beyond Winning, Negotiating to Create Value in Deals and Disputes. It's got just sort of a great framework for how to negotiate with others in a way that is a win for both sides. And I think that's really the big shift here. Is we want to move from I'm going to win and you're going to die. Like that's really what that is too. I'm not going to play unless we can all win, right? When the creative conflict resolution, creative resolution of difference comes out of that. I'm not going to play unless we can win. Both win.
Okay, cool, awesome. Yeah, that Marshall Rosenberg book. I'm a big fan of his work. He is an absolute genius, and very practical takeaways in that as well. And like, you know, I suppose there's an underlying theory, but some really good practical steps.
I got the Jayson seal of approval there. Yay!
Okay, quite a few questions in the chat already. Okay, this is from Carmel, and Carmel has asked, where would you place power and respect within the issue of conflict?
Well, every interaction, it can be viewed as a dynamic in which power is who has the power is being determined. But I would say that ultimately, I decide, I'm going to speak for myself, I decide who and what has power over me based on my beliefs and my mastery of self. There's a prayer that I meditate on, and it goes like this. It doesn't matter whether you think there's a God or not, but it goes like this. God, grant me this serenity, right? In serenity, in that confrontation with that young man, I was actually incredibly peaceful because I had arrived at a place where all of the reality of the situation and my values had all balanced out. It was an amazing experience. I will never forget that experience. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, right? I knew I couldn't change that I was there, that there's a guy with a knife that was threatening me, that I only had one friend there and he was questionable at best, and that there were 6 of them. So I accepted what I couldn't change. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can. The only thing that I could change was my presentation, what was going to come from me and what's going on in here, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think for me, what comes out of that every time I use it is my sense of power comes from in here. You know, Nelson Mandela was in jail for 27 years and ended up becoming president of South Africa. Like, what? You know, because while he was in jail, he never allowed his captors to have power over him in his own mind. Yeah, he couldn't leave his cell, but in his mind, he was converting them. In his mind, he was teaching them about respect. In his mind, he was teaching them about human dignity. And many of his captors acknowledged that when he was released. So what is power and where does it come from? Now, respect. Woo, you know, we disrespect. Respect is so contextual. You know, I train in a Japanese traditional martial arts school, and my teacher's concept of respect is so much deeper than mine. I mean, let's face it, Americans don't really know much about respect. We're a little raw culturally, right? And it has taken me years to figure out that when he says to me, Rich, have you been well? You know, that he is very respectfully suggesting to me, you might want to come to my class more. It's taken me years to figure that out. It's like the cultural translation is insane. But for him, respect means never confronting someone directly, always hinting at, always, it's just so, respect is so contextual. And it ultimately comes down to, how do I respect my own values and my own self? And what respect am I going to show to another? How open am I going to be to what they believe, even if it's diametrically opposed to what I say I believe?
Very interesting. I really like that idea. I decide who has power based on my beliefs. I think a lot of that as well is, I suppose, being consciously aware that that's the case, that often, you know, because we're not thinking around that, we're not thinking around power dynamics, that we can often give power away, but just not consciously realizing that we actually do have it within us. Very good.
Well, no, we have all of our power comes from ourselves. I mean, we are powerless over the law. We are powerless over the way it's enforced, but how we react to that. There was also a guy named Hurricane Carter who got locked up in the United States. He was a fighter. Hurricane Carter refused to even believe that he was incarcerated. He came into the jail and he said to the warden, I am not a prisoner here. That's your mindset. I mean, it's about mindset. Like, power comes from mindset. And yeah, he came out of that, by the way, and recovered all his wealth and everything in his life. I mean, Muhammad Ali might be another example of that. But mindset is a huge source of power. Like, it's about how you define power. You know, when I said here in America, we're a little raw when it comes to power, we think culturally that power is about the biggest dog and who's got the most weapons, right? Like, look at how my country behaves, you know, out there in the political world, right? But that's not what power is about. It is not about there's 6 of them and 2 of me. It's about mindset.
Very good. Okay, awesome. I also like that comment on that respect is contextual. You know, what respect or behaving respectfully for one person isn't necessarily behaving respectfully.
Oh man, I get couples all the time, and one says she's disrespecting me. That she like, and his concept of respect is totally different than hers. I mean, we have a whole discussion about, all right, let's talk about respect. Let's find some mutual ground for what that even means.
Okay, I'm going to jump on to a couple of other people's questions. This is from Ashleen. I really like this. I always seem to walk away from conflict and then feel annoyed I didn't even bring up what I wanted to discuss. How to gradually expose myself to conflict without getting overwhelmed?
That's a great question. These are all great questions, by the way. I like Julie's question also. There's some really good stuff here. And here's the thing. It goes back to the example of walking down the street and falling in the hole. So when we walk away from conflict and don't feel emotionally complete, it's basically because we fell in the hole and crawled out, or maybe we tiptoed around it. You know, and what that means is there was something that wasn't complete for us in that exchange. We didn't feel heard, perhaps. Or perhaps we feel like we missed what the other person said, right? So much of it is about feeling heard. And so it's perfectly fair and reason. And the reason why we walk away is we're triggered, right? Like if you're in there and you're going, blah, 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 nothing constructive is going to come out of that. Walking away is the best thing you can do. Like the example of the hole is once you become aware of your triggers, you find yourself triggered and you're in the middle of it and you say, wait, excuse me, I'm a little hot under the collar. I need to go take a timeout. Let's come back to this when we're both clear-headed. So my suggestion would be if you feel incomplete, dissatisfied, like you didn't get to say what you needed to say, contact the person or people and say, hey, I don't feel emotional. I don't throw emotionally out because they'll think it's weird. I don't feel complete with this. Let's have, can I just revisit this with you? And then you have the opportunity to reset the frame in a way that might feel less threatening to them. Right? So part of it is understanding where they're coming from so that you can present it in a way that doesn't feel threatening. The same idea in a way that doesn't feel threatening. I once had a client who was like, no, I am the way I am and I present the way I present. But once she started to understand her coworkers, she got it. She was like, oh, they're never going to be able to receive what I have to say if I'm coming from that place. So it's not about I am what I am. It's about I have something to share. And if I present it this way, they might actually hear me.
Awesome. I really like that. I mean, it's in terms of my work with people as well, we would often do a lot of focused on what it is we want rather than what it is that we're trying to avoid. So, you know, if we're trying to avoid conflict or the pain that we associate with conflict, maybe to flip it and start to go, well, actually, what is it that I want out of the situation? How can I get a little bit of that? And then you're starting to build wins in, you know, and again,
I think that this word conflict really is loaded. So, you know, it's perfectly fair to say to someone, I feel like we're in conflict right now. I need to take a time out. Let's get back together and talk about our differences so we can better understand each other. That's a way to reset that frame. Like pull the word conflict out and go to let's, you know, explore our differences so that we can find some common ground. You're setting an intention. By the way, when you say that to someone else, you're also speaking to your unconscious mind, right? Your unconscious mind is triggered. You're saying to it, chill out. We're going to look for some common ground, okay? And our unconscious mind is like a big dog, really. Like, you know, and it goes, oh, okay, got it. You know, like when what we say is a part of us is always listening to what's coming out of our mouth. So be really careful what you say and use it. Like talk to yourself. Self-talk is mad important.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, this is from L. Love the fact that your name is just a letter. Richard said it was hard to get someone to understand your values in order to connect. Where can you start?
A technique that I use with couples is first we articulate the differences, and they say all the things that's upside down about their relationship, and we list them, you know, one by one, because getting it out is important. Then the next step in the process is to talk about, all right, in terms of the area of conflict, what's your dream? What do you really want? So if the area of conflict is around, I do a lot of helping people figure out parenting plans, you know, how they're going to raise children living from two separate households. So they both talk about what they want for the child. Oh, I want him to go to college. I want him to be an amazing football player, like soccer player, we call it here, football player. I want them to have the freedom to express whatever gender they choose. I want, you know, whatever it is they have going on. And then in that exercise, we explore each person's list, making sure that the other person understands it. And so if it's Jayson and I who are in counseling, you know, the facilitator would say, Rich, Jayson has this value that his child should, you know, should be Miss America and want to end world hunger and promote world peace. What does that mean to you? And then I would say back in different words, it's actually a committed listening exercise, what that is. And Jayson would say, yeah, that's it. Right? Or Jayson would say, that's not it at all. Let me say it again. So we would keep doing that until it is clear that both sides fully understand the other person's dream and that both sides feel heard. Feeling heard is really important in the process. So that's how we get to primal values. And at the end of that exercise, there's so much concurrence and agreement feeling heard is 90% of the battle. And then they actually appreciate they have shared dreams and different dreams for the child. They actually appreciate that there's a lot of concurrence there, even though they had so much disagreement about other things, and we're able to work it through. That's the actual process, how it actually works.
Wow, cool. I'd love to pick your brain a little bit more on your process if we've time before the end of that. If not, we'll definitely
Sure. Not my process. It's that comes out of mediation training, and it came from the Center for Understanding and Conflict. Amazing organization, really simple system that helps people in disagreement to build agreements in small steps.
Okay, awesome. I'll definitely be
in any situation.
Cool. Yeah, can't wait to go into a little bit more depth on that as well. I suppose what strikes me about that as well, just if I can throw in a little bit on it as well, Rich, I suppose in terms of getting someone to understand you, something I find very, very useful, funnily enough, is when we focus on understanding other people, when we focus, for example, on listening and making sure that we understand what the other person is saying, feeling listened to makes you much more open to listening to other people. Because when you feel listened to, you feel valued, you feel like your opinion matters, and then you're being less aggressive, less defensive, and so
exactly, so
you're much more open, you know. Okay, Julie. Okay, I haven't pre-read this one now, so you'll have to excuse if it's a little, my explanation's a little bit long-winded. Hi, Rich. Thanks so much for the session today. Do you have any tips for helping another person think win-win, especially in the heat of an argument? I have someone in my life who really thinks that if there's an argument, there's a winner and a loser. One person is right and one person is wrong, which is not how I see things.
Yeah, so that other person, let me back up. So I work under the premise that there are 7 basic emotional energy levels, emotional levels, right? So the first one would be kind of victim, sad, hurt, and in that position, I can't win because I've already lost, right? Once you're a victim, you've already lost, it's over. And then the next level, which usually jolts us out of the first one, is anger. And the great thing about anger is we can win. The bad news about anger is we want to win at the expense of others. And if you've ever had an angry boss, you know that that will get things done. It will keep his business going, but everyone's unhappy and eventually people quit and they have a big high turnover. So there's a problem with the good news about anger is we start winning. The bad news is we drive everyone away. And that's where that person is. And just so you know, third level, those 2 levels are serious amygdala levels, right? Amygdala is about fight, flight, or play dead, right? That's kind of, and so when we're in mourning for the loss of someone and in deep sadness, that's a form of play dead, right? I'm just going to have this feeling. The good news about level 1, about that sadness, is when we have it and really process it, we're very emotionally complete and can move on. When we avoid it, that we're haunted by grief, it inhibits our ability to function. All right, so level 3 is about reconciliation. It's the beginning of our cerebral cortex kicking in, and our cerebral cortex is basically saying, okay, we're going to take this anger and we're going to win. If other people win, it's okay, but what's most important is that we win. So that could appear manipulative. So that's better than like kicking everyone's ass all the time and winning because they don't want to be around you. Level 4 is very emotional. Like this is where we're starting to have that empathy, Jayson, that you've been saying is so important. Like if we don't have compassion for the other person, then we're going to be stuck always winning, maybe at the expense of others, maybe not, and appearing manipulative and narcissistic, right? Once we start to have that connection to other people, by the way, from a win-lose point of view, that's like very parental. I'm going to give my life for you. And you find people who hang out on this level a lot actually burn themselves out because they stop taking care of themselves. They're just giving and giving and giving and self-sacrificing, and they burn out. But it's the stepping stone to level 5, which is win-win. I'll spare you the other 2 for now because they're a little ethereal. Win-win is, yeah, I see what the win is for me. I have compassion for you, and I see what the win is for you. And let's figure out where the common ground is. So the trick is to, long-winded answer, the trick is to help somebody move from that level 2, I'm going to win and you're going to lose position, to bump them up to where they see that win-win might be better there. And there's ways to do that. I mean, one, depending on how self-aware they are, would be simply to say, it seems like you want a clear winner and a clear loser. What if we both won? And just have them dwell on that idea. If they're really stuck in their own rage and anger, then it's, I mean, or level 3 is a better way to put it. Starting to communicate, starting to develop some form of empathy might be helpful to explain to them, look, the reason why I feel the way I feel is because, you know, my mom spanked me all the time when I was a kid, and so I'm very reactive to this. I really do want to work this out with you. I'm trying to get past my own stuff here. That's an attempt to develop empathy, or to say, all right, another way to develop empathy would be to acknowledge their position. So it goes back to having them feel heard. So how in depth do I want to go here? There's a tool called committed listening or reflective listening, or in mediation, we call it looping, where it's an actual exercise where, kind of like what I described when I was talking about me and Jayson's breakup, you know, that where you're showing that you really hear someone. That is a really powerful way to control your own amygdala and develop empathy. So Google it. We're not going to go into too much detail about it here because there's a lot of questions, but that practicing that again and again and again. The reason why it chills your amygdala is it requires your cerebral cortex to, what you're looking for is one fact and one feeling, and you want to say it back to them in a way that's different than their actual words. And Google it. Reflective listening or mirroring or looping or any of those things, you'll get stuff on this. That's a very powerful way to build connection, empathy, and compassion with the other person. And perhaps as your amygdala is not triggered by their position of, I'm going to win and you're going to die, you know, or I'm going to win and you're going to lose, however you want to frame that. As you do the reflective listening exercise and they start to feel heard, the energy might actually change and shift, and they might be able to move towards a win-win.
Awesome. So give them the win. Give them the win-win and prove them wrong.
Well, that committed listening tool is unbelievable. I mean, I walked into a delicatessen once, and there was a homeless guy who was, they were trying to toss him out, you know, and he was positioned. He wasn't going. They were going to call the police. And, you know, I turned to him and I said, like, you know, because I'm like, my moniker is the peacemaker. This is even before I started doing this work. I turned to him and I said, brother, these people can't hear you. You know, they don't know where you're coming from. They just don't understand. This fight isn't worth it. And he looked me in the eyes and he said, you're right. You know, and because in that moment, finally, somebody heard him, and he said, he walked out. You know, it's unbelievable how well this stuff works. Right? If you're in customer service, 95% of customer service is making the other person feel heard.
Yeah. Yeah,
I used to teach my employees when I had a business like that they carried a little notebook and a pen, and people would walk up to them, and we were working in the streets doing garden plantings, and people would complain, oh, those flowers are not sustainable, blah, 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 blah. And they were trained, my employees were trained to pick up their notepad and say, excuse me a minute, I want to report this to my supervisor. And they say, what is it you're saying? And they'd say, all right, it sounds like you're really angry because annuals don't seem sustainable to you. And they'd say, that's right. And they say, is there anything else? No, it's all right. I will report that to my supervisor. And they would then say, thank you, and walk away, right? Like it'll diffuse almost any situation.
Okay. I mean, I think I worked in the States for a time, and the one thing that really struck me about the US is the level of customer service. You would be horrified if you came for dinner here, Rich. Horrified. And it's very, very true. It's a very empathetic, and you're exactly right. I mean, I worked in hospitality for years, and you know, especially in management, and you know, the manager is always sent in to deal with complaints, and 90% of it is literally just letting people know that their complaint, acknowledge that it's there, and people tend to calm down.
Yeah, post-pandemic, people were exploding when they first got back in. I would go into a large big box store, and I heard one guy go off, and for like loud, I mean, you could hear him on the other side of the store. He was so loud because all that pent up rage and anger. And the manager just said, okay, sir, this is what I can help you with. This is what I can, until the guy chilled. I hear you, but this is what we can do, and this is what we can, until the guy chilled out. It was amazing. I wanted to clock this guy myself, and I was just an innocent bystander. So I couldn't believe how well trained this manager was.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to do one more question because we're kind of a little bit over time, and I'm conscious of your time especially. Are you okay to take one more question, Rich?
I got loads of time. I blocked out extra time for this. These things always go over. I talk too much.
Cool. Thanks so much. So maybe we can do two. This is kind of to build on what we were just talking about. What do you do when someone has got, a set of non-negotiable, when someone is like, you know what, this is a line, this is something that I'm not moving on? How do you deal with?
Yeah, great question. If first, you would always attempt to get under the position. Why is that non-negotiable? What is it about that that's so important to you? The real question is, what is it about this is so important to you? And so, if the line is, either you stop working at nights, or this marriage is over. I'm taking something really innocuous. You want to get underneath that. So what is it about me working at nights? Oh, well, you're never well rested. We never see each other. I'm lonely. Right? Oh, so what you'd like, I'd like to see more of you too. Maybe there's a way we could work on that first while I work on getting a new job or something. You look for some kind of, it's about common ground. Now, if that doesn't work, if they're so positioned that they just won't get off of it, then you really don't have a lot of choice. Like, if what you want is win-win, the position is, I'm in this for a win-win or I won't play. And you just can't, if people are not willing to get underneath to the values, if they're not willing to get off of the position, if they're, for whatever reason, if you can't help them get to that place of where's our common values, then you don't play with them. There's another question in here about what do you do when you find people ganging up on you? And there I was with 6 people and 2 of us. I appealed to the leader, and we found common ground. It also didn't help that somebody hit me, and that didn't, like, that I just looked at the guy. I looked at, one thing I have for me is I can take a hit. I'm not a great fighter, but I can take a hit. This is like, so you work with your strengths, right? It didn't hurt that they thought, oh my God, he really won't go down easily. When he says we could kill him, but other people are going to get hurt, that will be true because somebody just hit him when he wasn't looking and he's still standing, and just like, what was that? So that helps. If you're being ganged up on, you either find a way to level it out or you leave.
Awesome. Okay. Conscious of time. I'm going to wrap it up at this point. I suppose the main thing at the end for this to me is to say thank you so much, Rich. Especially the Q&A. That was very, very awesome. I enjoyed that. It's been one of my favorite meetups.
Cool.
We are going to do a follow-up to this. We're going to do an interview on early next week, and we're going to post that up on the YouTube as well. We will be sending this video, and we'll definitely send links for the books and some other resources and bits and pieces out to everyone who registered as well.
Hey, can I just add a piece in?
Please, of course.
Yeah, just going back to that, what do you do when you're ganged up? So, all right, it's not a win-win. You say, I'm not going to play. The classic move with any group is to divide and conquer. So then you take them off separately and work with them individually, and there'll be a whole different song sung. So you don't have to say it's not a win-win, I'm out of here, and quit. If it's really important to you, you find a way to find common ground with each of them individually, and break up the dynamic of, we're a pack and you're not part of our pack. That's the basic stance. We're a pack and you are not part of our pack. We are a tribe. You're not part of our tribe. That's like what was happening on the street that day. They were a tribe, and me and my friend, we were not part of their tribe.
Okay. Awesome. So I suppose, if you're bringing that into the day today, if people are ganging up and you did take them out one by one and, have those individual conversations. I suppose people act very strangely in groups. Wouldn't say strangely, but there tends to be a different mindset, and
there is a group mind that occurs, and there is an inherent leveling of individuality. One of the greatest challenges is to stay personally empowered within a group. Like the power of cults is the power to ground out the individual and just get people to follow along. And if I'm completely honest, what I really would like in life, it would just be so much simpler. If somebody would just tell me how to live and what to do, it would be so much easier, because then I could avoid what? Conflict. But the truth is that when I avoid conflict, I am disempowered. When I live in a culture or in a group or a setting where I'm allowing other people how to live and what to do, I have given away my personal power.
Yeah, very true. Rich, I'm very sorry. I almost forgot. And I'm not sure if maybe we'll share it in the email. Did you have an offer that you wanted to share with people, or will we do that in the email later?
Do I have an offer? Yeah, sure. If you want to talk to me individually, like if you want to sit down and chat for 30 minutes about a situation and go more in depth, you can reach me through a bit.ly link, bit.ly/end the fight, all one word, ENDTHEFIGHT. So just think end the fight with bit.ly in front of it, and you'll get to my calendar, and we can schedule some time together to talk. And always the purpose of those talks is, if you have a situation that you want to resolve, for you to find the natural next step for you. It is not a sales call, it's an act of service.
Okay, awesome. I've just stuck Rich's links in the chat, so I'm sure you'll get him through his website, and I'll put up the contact there as well. And definitely check out his Facebook and Instagram. They're great. Okay, with that, I am going to call it a day for today. Thank you again very, very much, Rich Heller. Thank you, everyone, for coming and all the interaction and all the great questions.
Oh, wait, Mary has a request.
Oh.
So look, I'm going to put that bit.ly link in the chat.
Please.
Except I can't spell. bit.ly and the fight, and that should work.
Just so you know as well, Rich, I've got a couple of thank you and Rich into my personal thanks as well, on top of what's in the chat.
And here's my email if that, oops, that went to Mary directly. Let's try that again.
The bit.ly link has gone to everyone.
Yeah, no, but I was putting out my email and somehow I was back to, I'm going to put out my email as well in case the bit.ly link, I haven't used that link in ages, so it's probably still good. I don't trust bit.ly. That's my email. So if you'd rather just email me, feel free.
Sure. We'll share all these links with everyone in the next couple of days as well.
Yeah, it's such a great group. I love the questions. I love it. Thank you for playing along with me and putting words in the chat and being present. That was so cool. I even loved hearing about how the beach is windy. I miss the beach. Thank you so much, all of you. You were awesome.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. Well, thank you, Rich. And thank you, everybody. And we'll see you probably be 6 weeks and 2 months for the next one. And we'll see you.
And someone says the bit.ly link is not found, so please use my email.
Okay. And again, we will share all of this in an email afterwards for you guys as well. And feel free, if you're having, Rich's links are all there in the chat. If you're having any trouble getting in touch with them, reach out to me. And
yeah, I'm an open book.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So thank you ever so much, guys. And we shall see you all again relatively soon. Awesome. Thanks again. Cheers.